Tonight, it is no-brainer that the race to succeed President Uhuru Kenyatta as the Mount Kenya region kingpin is gaining momentum, with several political heavyweights backing up the president's nod as the region charts its path in the 2022 game plan. On Pundit's Night tonight, we delve deeper into the Mount Kenya region succession politics and game plan ahead of 2022. Our guests tonight: Kiharu lawmaker Ndindi Nyoro, Gatundu South lawmaker Moses Kuria, our resident analyst Herman Manyora, and as equally publicized earlier on, former Kiambu governor William Kabogo had confirmed his presence and attendance for this show. But up to now, he has not arrived, but we will be waiting for him as we continue with the show nonetheless. Keep talking to us. Your voice matters, so does your opinion counts as the viewer. The hashtag to use is Pundit's Night TV47. Send us a message on 22047. Let's get to our debate tonight. Waheshimiwa, thank you for making time for us tonight on TV47.
Thank you.
And Ndindi, let me start with you. It's no-brainer that Central Kenya's interests will be catered for post-2022, is it?
That?
Yes, Ndindi.
I didn't get the question very...
I'm asking, it's not rather a question to ask whether Central Kenya will be on the table in 2022.
Thank you very much, Abubakar, and thank you for having us this evening. I actually expected the former governor to be on the panel, because as you know, we are people who love justice. It would have been a better debate if we have both sides on the table. But either way, I have to say that as we approach 2022, as you know, Mount Kenya region, we have the majority of the votes in terms of the blocks, and definitely in any alignment, Mount Kenya will be a major factor. And even in the Hustler Nation, we understand that fact, and I am sure that we have a central role and a central place in the Hustler Nation where I belong.
All right, and we'll talk of the Hustler Nation and narrative a little bit later in this discussion. Let me bring in Mheshimiwa Kuria. Then does it matter of who advances the interest of Central Kenya as a voting bloc?
Well, it doesn't matter, because if you have not been doing it, you can start doing it. And some of us have been advancing the Mount Kenya issues as we advance the issues of this country. So this so-called rush to have someone who is advancing the interest is neither here nor there. What we need is to ensure that the interest of every Kenyan is catered for, because every Kenyan also includes the average Mount Kenya voter. And to really look at the issues, and there are no new issues that will emerge. The same issues we've been advocating: issues of infrastructure, issues of development, issues of an environment for doing business, issues of equitable sharing of national revenue, or proportional sharing of national revenue. They are the same thing. So for us, it's business as usual.
You say it is business as usual, but this is a region just like any other region that has had its representatives at the table. You say it doesn't matter of who represents it this time?
It doesn't matter really. It doesn't matter, because as I'm saying, as a team, we are not had many people who are advancing these issues, and I don't see them going anywhere. So it's just upon the few of us who have been advocating for these issues to continue advocating it, irrespective of who is the president in this country.
All right, Ndindi, the very essence of having this discussion is what we have seen lately in the political circles: the rush to get the Mount Kenya vote in the 2022 polls. First, Ndindi, in your own view, why is there a seemingly disquiet on Mount Kenya's succession post-2022 this time?
I think it's normal, Abubakar, because we are all politicians, and politicians, we believe in progress. When you become an MP, you aim higher to be something else. When you get to that something else, you want to go higher. And therefore, this jostling on who actually should represent the Mount Kenya interests is normal, so to say. And we are seeing the same in other communities. And I think having as many people as possible chasing for the same prize is better, because once you have many people, you are able to evaluate them on the basis of merit, and you are likely to get the very best. What I have a problem with is these people with some kind of entitlement that because of their standing in the society there before, historically, they believe that they are the only people who are entitled to carry the community interests. I have to say also that most of these people who are now coalescing and pretending to be kingpins, most of them have been silent when there has been salient issues affecting our people. And actually, they are not coming to lead the people. They are coming because the people have already gone ahead of them. And therefore, the many latecomers that I've seen, and especially those who are very entitled, are not coming because they mean well. They are coming because they have seen the wave, they have seen where the people are, and therefore, probably, majority of them are trying to reap where they didn't sow.
Ndindi, what are you basing as a sole base of judgment when you say they do not mean well for the region?
What I mean is that we have been in the trenches, most of us, and I'm talking plainly in terms of us who are branded Tagatanga. We have been in the trenches within our own government. We've been talking about the issues affecting our people. When people are chased at night when it's raining in Kariobangi by the same administration that we voted, most of these people who now want to be crowned as kingpins, we are silent. When the maize farmers, when the coffee farmers, when the tea farmers, when the milk farmers have been wallowing in terms of low prices for their produce, we have been there with them in solidarity. And the purported self-entitled kingpins were nowhere to be found. And therefore the people of Mount Kenya, actually, what they term as their kingpin is not the personality per se. It is their interests being taken care of in terms of when we look at their administration and the alignments as we head to 2022. And I want to tell you for sure, because I've been to Kiharu and many places, in Muranga and many places in Mount Kenya region. This issue that we have been put in a box there before, of being called our people all the time we have elections, I think now our people are opening their eyes and they can see the reality. And the reality is that it is not necessarily the person who is your neighbor that can carry your interests. It is the people who you can sit down with, who understand your background, those who understand where you are coming from, and especially the people who can give you a listening ear, whom we can call political allies. Not necessarily your neighbor or necessarily a person who talks your language.
All right, and now that we are talking of the succession and the politics of it, plus the game plan, Mheshimiwa Moses Kuria, one person who has shown signals of wanting to show direction and leadership to the 2022 succession is President Uhuru Kenyatta himself. He says, and I quote while speaking to the larger Mount Kenya voters, he said, to Mount Kenya region, beware of people who are intent on bringing division. I urge you, whatever we are going and wherever we will be going, let's work together as people. If you are bought with petty cash to decide who will lead and who won't, it will boomerang on you.
Our people of Mount Kenya region have been working together. They started working together first in 1992 in our first multi-party. As a matter of fact, they started working together before multi-party because we were united in opposing the Moi dictatorship. We fought that together. We suffered. Our economy was left in ruins. We were still left united. We went into the multi-party together, though we supported two camps, Kibaki and Matiba. By the time we got to 1997, we were united. We supported Kibaki to the man, and we advanced our issues to that point of view. Come to 2002, the region voted for their own sons, Uhuru Kenyatta and Mwai Kibaki, but they were very clear about the issues. 2007, they voted for Kibaki to the man. 2013, they voted for Uhuru to the man. 2017, they voted for Uhuru to the man. And even now, nobody will tell them to work together. It is something they are used to. It is something they have done without anybody telling them. It is something they have done without anybody forcing them. It is something they have done with the proper calculation of what is in their best interest.
But Moses, if this is a presidential advice to the region, this sounds as though the president, at least on the phraseology of what he's saying, knows of people who are intending to divide the region. You dispute that?
I totally dispute that. I do not know who want to divide the region. And in any case, our people have never been called to Uhuru Park to unite. They have always united out of their own volition. And luckily for me, I've been part of all that journey. So I'm not telling you about something that I read in textbooks. And our people have got this, when the big hour comes, our people always stand together. And nobody tells them to stand together. They do it out of their own volition.
All right, let me bring in our resident analyst, Herman Manyora, to the discussion. Herman, is it daydreaming to assume that the region, the bloc, vote-wise come 2022, may be split, may be divided?
I think I want to just stick with the question you asked. You have asked the two politicians, they are my friends and my sons, I think, whether the Mount Kenya region requires a spokesman or a person to show them the way or a group of persons. And they have not answered the question well, perhaps because you are not a teacher. So let me ask it well, but let somebody fix the echo also. I have two questions, one for Kuria and one for Ndindi Nyoro, with your permission as a host. When I will moderate, I'll be a little tougher on Kuria because he's a little older and a little lenient on Ndindi Nyoro. So here is a question for Kuria. Moses Kuria, is it your position this evening, which you want to share with Kenyans, that Mount Kenya, the gamer community, for the first time, will allow an outsider to lead them and show them the way? Is that your conviction that William Ruto, who is not from the mountain, will lead the community and the community will allow itself to be led by an outsider for the first time? For Ndindi Nyoro, I have this question. Is it your position, Ndindi Nyoro, this evening? Are you sharing with Kenyans the thinking that for the first time, the most populous community in this country, the most sophisticated, the most advanced, the most political, the community that knows the sweetness of power more than any other community, is it your position this evening that for the first time, the gamer community will allow itself to be led by young people so that you want us to believe that for the first time, gamer will be led by the very able Ndindi Nyoro, Kamari Shungwa, the slightly more advanced but still young, nevertheless, Moses Kuria, and the light? Please answer these questions as clearly as possible, because marks shall be awarded for clarity.
Herman, they will answer your questions, but will you mind answering mine rather? I asked you, Herman, that... You remember my question,
yes.
Herman?
Ask again.
You forgot the question I asked you by asking another question to your fellow panelists. Yeah. Herman, I asked you, it's daydreaming to some.
Please
to assume,
please ask.
I'm asking Herman, to some they say it is a daydream to assume that Central Kenya will be divided come 2022.
You know, we can only come up with possible scenarios. Let's say, for example, if the mountain is not given a person for them to desert Ruto, and they decide to stick with Ruto, they'll vote for Ruto, I think, almost to a man. Safe to guess over 80%. I've maintained this figure. Nothing has changed. Even with Sagana 1, 2, 3, the mountain is still 80% in favor of Ruto. So if they are not convinced, they will still vote for Ruto undivided. But let us assume, because they hate and they don't like Raila Odinga, if Uhuru gave them Mudavadi, for example, let us assume then they 50-50, they accept Mudavadi as a handshake candidate. They could give him 40%, 50%, and the rest for Ruto, because they really love Ruto, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. So what does that mean? It means part of the Gema vote will go to Mudavadi, and part of that will go to Ruto. But there is yet another scenario. And I'm sure Moses Kuria, Ndindi may not know, but Moses Kuria must know this. The mountain can produce a candidate. And I can already suspect and see a candidate. If the timing is right, if the handshake politics goes the way it is beginning to go and like that, Msegemunega, I don't know how to say in Kiswahili, jamaa atatokea pale mountain. So it is possible they can be united under their own, if their own comes up. They can also be united under Ruto up to 2022. But it is equally possible if Uhuru gives them a more likable candidate than Raila Odinga, they could divide the vote. Part will give Ruto and part will give Mudavadi or whoever it is. Have I answered your question?
All right, Herman, and I believe they will answer equally your question. But Mheshimiwa Ndindi, the president on succession, and I quote again what he said. He said, mimi sijui nani atakuwa raisi, uchaguzi utakuja na Mungu ndiye hupeana uongozi, tufanye kazi. He also is on record saying that he will not leave the country to thieves. At least he admits, the president, that he will not dictate to the country on who to vote for in as far as 2022 politics is concerned. But he's hinting on a face value at where not to vote for or who not to follow.
First of all, the president has the liberty to have his opinion. But as you know, in terms of transition and in terms of handing over power, he has not that much discretion on who to hand over power to. But if I interpreted the president well, I don't know what he meant by saying he cannot hand over to a thief. And I don't know the personalities he meant, but maybe he meant the same friends that I saw the other day at State House. Of course, I'm sure you saw them having a parade where Gideon Moi himself read some statement. And if he meant those people that I saw, maybe he has a point that he cannot hand over power to a person who would steal land meant for a cemetery in the name of Musalia Mudavadi. I don't know whether he meant he cannot hand over power to a thief of NYS lad in the name of Kalonzo Musyoka. I also do not know whether he meant Raila Odinga, who has a scam also in relations to kazi kwa vijana. I also do not know whether he meant Giro. Giro, you know, she's very good in also banning offices after doing some fishy deals.
Ndindi, those are allegations. Those have not been proved in a court of law. We'll assume they are allegations.
Exactly, but yes, they are there in the public domain. I also do not.
But given that they have not been proven in a court of law, you can't justify that they happen, can you?
Yeah, I mean, the onus is not on me to justify. I also do not know whether he meant Gideon Moi, who I have never known anything he has ever done legitimately without the help of his name and his father. And therefore, I do not know whether what the president meant. But allow me, Abubakar, to also answer my friend, Professor Manyora. And first of all, I don't know whether you gave him the right brief, that he was not coming to a classroom where he teaches. He was coming to a serious TV show that is watched nationally. And therefore, for him to come here and purport that he want to depart the table of panelists and go now to the side of interviewers.
He asked one question at least.
He may need to bring his CV. He may need to bring his CV to TV 47 to consider whether he meets the threshold. But to go to the question he asked about Mount Kenya region, knowing the sweetness of power and whether they can be able to be. And I will answer even because it was one of the same question. The one he asked, the one he asked Mheshimiwa Moses Kuria. And I am sure also Mheshimiwa Moses will have a different perspective. But to answer, because it was more of the same. I think the problem with this country is people like my friend Manyora, very condescending in nature, and people who are chauvinists. Because number one, he talked about an outsider. That is chauvinism. And that is ethnicity that we are trying to run away from as a country, as we forge a country that is united and a country and politics that is based on issues. So Manyora, I want to advise you that there is no outsider who is a Kenyan. Every Kenyan was born in Kenya can look for votes anywhere without permission from anyone. Because as you know, Kenya is not a fiefdom. Kenya does not belong to certain groupings. Kenya is a country that is liberal, and you can run and go to any part of the country to seek any support in whichever nature. And therefore, because I know he meant William Ruto is not an outsider when you are talking about Mount Kenya politics. He's a Kenyan, and we have also known as a country and as a region that this issue of ethnicity has for so long been used to disenfranchise us as the people of Mount Kenya region to the benefit of a few elites. And therefore, our ethnicity is no longer what Manyora is referring to in terms of the language that we speak. Our ethnicity, so to say, and our identity is based on where we come from. Where we come from in terms of our backgrounds, in terms of economic, and therefore,
not in terms of a region.
Manyora must get used to this, that there is no longer that politics of balkanization. The politics we belong to, and the identity that I belong to.
I need to give
Abubakar, just a minute.
I need to give Moses Kuria a chance to respond.
Okay. The identity that I belong to as a Mount Kenya resident, so to say, is not what Manyora is referring to in terms of ethnicity.
All right, Ndindi. And as I give Moses Kuria a chance to respond, let me ask you this. Are you tonight foregoing your identity as someone from the Mount Kenya region and backing your identity on the economic status? Is a yes or no question.
Is that mine?
Yes.
I am telling you, Abubakar, that we can no longer be used in terms of the language that we speak. Our new identity is the hustler.
All right.
And the other one that we know have another name, I'm sure Manyora is aware of it. And therefore, there is no way that Manyora and the likes are going to put us back and to digress us back to the same politics that has put us to where we are in terms of people who are forgotten and in terms of people who only watch as others eat. And they are said there using our names. And the issue of age, which he also cited, that for the first time, Mount Kenya is going to be led by young people. Manyora, I am sure you are also a student of history, though I have never seen any student or any of your candidate excelling in any field. But I also want to tell you, Manyora, when you talk about age, you need to research about somebody we call Mwai Kibaki and tell us here, because you know at what age he started leading this country, not just as a president, but also in other spheres. I want Manyora to tell me at what age Museveni became president of Uganda. I want Manyora, which is 40 years, I want also Manyora to tell us, if he knows, the age at which somebody like Napoleon Bonaparte became an emperor. He became one at 36. And therefore, even the current president of France, he became president when he was barely 40. And therefore, the issue of age and trying to mix the same with what Manyora is trying to purport, which I believe is inexperience, is neither here nor there, so to say.
All right, let me bring Mheshimiwa Moses Kuria. And just for purposes of clarity, Mheshimiwa, was there a script, either written or otherwise, that President Uhuru Kenyatta's 10 years was to be followed by William Ruto's 10 years?
I'll come to that, but let me also say that Delhi has gotten 7 out of 10, assuming I'm the deputy head of department, and Manyora is the head of department in his classroom. So I don't want to repeat most of the issues that Ndindi has said, but just for Herman Manyora, and not just Herman Manyora because it's not unique to him. I have seen it in so many people from outside Mount Kenya region, where they purport to be professors of Mount Kenya politics. They know now more about our region than we know about it ourselves. And somebody will tell you, wait a minute, I know Gikuus, I know what they will do. And they are telling us, you know, it's like somebody telling us about how to be Catholic, and they are telling the Pope. So, you know, take it from me. One, you can take it to the bank now, that Kikuyus will vote for somebody from outside their community to be the next president of this country.
Why so, Moses Kuria?
Why so? Because it's not a new decision. And you have asked a very good question, which I'll now attempt to answer. Uhuru became president in 2003, not in 2013. The minute we saw in Mwai Kibaki, we were very clear that after Kibaki's 10 years, it is Uhuru. And there's a metaphor among our people where they say that you continue milking the cow as you feed, you know, the calf, and let it grow. So because Kikuyus or Mount Kenya people, they are investors, they are businessmen, they are long-range players. They don't wake up and make a decision. So Uhuru's decision was 10-year-old decision. They had made that decision, immediately they voted in for Mwai Kibaki. Equally so, the decision to support William Ruto was made in 2013. Immediately Uhuru said, I, Uhuru Kenyatta, do so at Kasarani. Kikuyus knew that for them, it is very important to do something called hedging. And so they had taken a 10-year hedge that after this Uhuru Kenyatta, it is William Ruto. So yes, it is, you talk about a script, but that script was not from what you hear, kumi yangu na kumi ya huyu. Hapana. It is something that they had taken 10 years ago, earlier, and decided that it is William Ruto. You know, when I see all these warabaru about William Ruto coming to Mount Kenya, I thought the problem of this country was Mount Kenya people or Kikuyus not supporting a candidate from another community. So when they voluntarily, without coercion, without anybody forcing them, out of their own volition, supporting somebody from another tribe, I thought they should be given a medal, not the kind of condemnation.
Mheshimiwa Moses Kuria, you talk of the longevity of this agreement, but the president is also on record saying, and I quote, some people keep saying I made a promise to them. No, I have only a promise and covenant with the people of Kenya. That is the promise I am implementing. Ask your guy in reference to the DP why he can't allow me to work and keeps coming back for the baton instead of waiting for his turn.
Now, you know that is contradictory. Because on one hand, you said the contract was with the people of Kenya. On the other hand, you say coming for the baton. From who? I thought the baton is with the people of Kenya. It is them to decide who to give the baton.
But in this case,
this narrative of coming back for
if he said kumi ni yangu, kumi ni ya Ruto, one will suppose the president was to hand over at least the leadership of the Jubilee Party or otherwise his political backyard and support to the deputy president.
How can you hand over what you never acquired?
You want to mean the president didn't acquire?
He didn't acquire, he was given voluntarily by the people. You cannot, you know, there's something, you know, we say nemo dat quod non habet. You cannot give what you don't have. The sovereign power, the power to decide, that baton belongs to the people. So those people genuinely, voluntarily give it to Uhuru Kenyatta. He cannot return it to them and tell them, now my people, whom do you want to give, the way you gave me willingly, who do you want to give it to? They decided to give it to Moses Kuria, fine. They decided to give it to Musalia Mudavadi, fine. Even in a court day in hell, they decided to give to Herman Manyora, fine, no problem. But this battle belongs to the people.
And it is the same people who constitutionally 50+1 voted for this duo with the assumption sum that one will hand over to the other, is it?
Absolutely. Not that assumption. On the assumption that we will go back to them and then they will decide where it goes. So this thing of someone giving, I just wish you know. So who gave Kibaki? So who gave Uhuru the baton? Kibaki? Who gave Kibaki the baton? Moi? Who gave Moi the baton? Kenyatta? So it is a fallacious argument because the people, they make some very, you know, unique, but for our region, very homogeneous decision, very unified decision on where to hand on the baton. What we can do is that we are passengers. Once you finish your tour of duty, you take a leave and you live a happy, respectable life like Moi Kibaki.
But Moses Kuria, just on a factual point, this is a president who was elected twice.
Thrice.
It's political. Thrice, yes. The repeat, of course, after the Supreme Court nullified. It will be political naivety, Moses Kuria, at best, to assume that he will not have an added advantage should he endorse someone or pass the baton to someone.
Well, there's another advantage because he's a voter and he has got followers. The same way, if I want to be president, if I have got support of Ndindi Nyoro, maybe people of Kiharu might support me. But it's not a must. The people of Kiharu might support me and tell me Ndindi Nyoro is our son. But in this situation, you know, talk to us. Let's talk. Let's have a conversation. We might support you. So it is exactly what you have put it. An added advantage, but not a mandatory requirement.
So are you then saying, as I move on from you, that the DP does not necessarily need the president's handing over of the baton or an endorsement? That's clear.
Those are two things. Handing over of the baton is enshrined in the Constitution, in a transitional arrangement of the Constitution, whereby religiously we have had a culture of peaceful handover of powers, peaceful transition every 5 years,
yes,
where the winners, take on the job of taking this country forward, and the incumbents hand over peacefully. I am sure, because I know the president maybe more than many people, that it is not this president who will want to overthrow or to usurp the Constitution. So handing over he will do because it is a requirement by the Constitution. Endorsement is something else. He might give, which is very good. He might not give, which is not obligated.
All right, let me bring in again Ndindi Nyoro to the discussion. Moses says he may give, which is good, he may not, which again will not necessarily count. But just on the question of the president and his deputy, the president, as he was clarifying that he has only a covenant with the Kenyans and the Kenyan population, he says, ask your guy why he can't allow me to do my work and keeps coming back for the baton instead of waiting for his turn. Which begs the question of either a patience-free deputy president or a president who has another political scheme.
Abubakar, I think the president, if you mean the bomber's statement, to my understanding, he said it in jest. That is why we even saw them laughing after he stated that issue. But I want to say, as Moses Kuria said, the president is not obligated to support anyone. He, besides being a president, he is also a Kenyan. He can give any opinion, but of course up to a certain extent. And that extent is that he may not have a very solid opinion in terms of, number one, who to hand over power to, and number two, on who, us, especially from Mount Kenya region, will vote for. Because he may not have all that power to decide. Because, as you know, Kenya is a secret ballot country, so to say. And when you go to the ballot, you vote for your preferred candidate. And therefore, there is no one vote that represents one community. There is no one vote that represents a region, because every person represents themselves in the ballot. I also want to remind you, because the issue of endorsement, we have heard it from every other quarter and from every other person who are, of course, clamoring for endorsement either from the president or from any other politician. Yes, it is an added advantage, because at the very least, you are assured of their one vote and probably their solid supporters. But I also want to remind you, Abubakar, that in 2002, the endorsement from the president actually never worked. It will actually work against the current president. That was an endorsement from a president that was so powerful and operating on a constitution that was based on a one strong man. If you remember very well in 2012, in all honesty, the endorsement of President Mwai Kibaki was not necessary to the current president. That is when we saw even the president coming in the open. And of course, you remember about the Madimoni issue. Because the system then, which probably represented the presidency, were for a different candidate in the name of Musalia Mudavadi, which that project never worked. And therefore, my issue and my opinion, and even my counsel, even if hakuna mtu ameiuliza, is that if for any politician who is looking forward to leading the country called Kenya, the endorsement they should be looking for is from the people of Kenya, in their villages, in their towns, and especially setting an agenda of taking the country forward, not an agenda of how this ethnicity is going to vote in whichever direction. Because I think there are some politicians who are still living in the past, where they believe that they will just look around for some few kingpins and wafanya mahesabu on the table in the boardroom, na wafanye president hapo kwa hiyo meza. I think that Kenya, we are past it. The Kenya we are living in currently is a Kenya where if you're looking for a mandate to lead the people, then that mandate must actually come from the people themselves. And therefore, all these battalion of people who are here in Nairobi looking for endorsements, please take the time that you have, visit the people of Kenya where they live, sell your agenda, and look for endorsement from them.
All right, let me bring in Herman Manyora, our resident analyst, to the discussion. Herman, there are those who hold the school of thought that just like President Mwai Kibaki did, President Uhuru Kenyatta should leave the political scene quietly. Should he?
Before I answer you, I must complain. You are taking too long, and you know I'm speaking for two people. I'm speaking for myself and for Kafogo, whom I will send a fee note. Now, allow me also to quickly respond to what my colleagues have said before I talk about Uhuru living quietly. You see, when I talked about a foreigner in Mount Kenya and a young people leading the community, I was very clear. The community can vote for a young man. Ndindi Nyoro is a good example. They have voted for him. He's a young man. They can even vote for a young president. But that's different from a young man telling the community to vote for that young man or for whoever. The community can vote for a foreigner, where a foreigner means a man foreign to the community, a Kenyan who is not from the Gema community. They can do that. We encourage them to do that. But my question was, will it be a foreigner, let's just use the word foreigner. Will it be a foreigner leading the community into voting for that foreigner or whoever it is they vote for? So I think these guys didn't get the point correctly. And secondly, Moses Kuria, my very good friend who I like so much, is a guy who thinks on his feet. Very intelligent man. He says Uhuru was voted for in 2003. Immediately Kibaki was sworn in. I presuppose that was because the community was going to vote for him as one of their own. So the Gema would be voting for Uhuru because he was. Now, come 2013, on what basis would the Gema community be making the decision that early before they can even see what Ruto has done? I want logically to presuppose it's because Kuria thinks the community will vote for Ruto and make that decision as early as 2013 on the basis of what Ruto had done, namely to help Uhuru get into power. I would then ask Kuria, would you compare what Ruto did to what Raila did? Would you reasonably compare what Jaramogi Oginga Odinga did to Kenyatta the senior? Would you compare? Perhaps you could compare that with what Kalonzo Musyoka did for Kibaki in 2007. So really that is, you have not answered the question, but I will give you a C because you are good people. Now to answer your question, Abubakar, almost without exception, people living power have an interest in who takes over. But this is guided by practice, by constitution. If it's a monarchy, you know it's obvious. By practice, by tradition, by culture. So somebody may come from a community or a society or a country where you can openly say so. There will be other societies, other countries where you do chini ya maji. But always people who are living will have an interest in who is succeeding them. That is the interest Moi had. And I keep correcting Kenyans. Moi's project never failed.
All right, Herman, let me interject you. Herman, let me interject you at that point.
Moi wanted Uhuru.
Herman, let me ask this. You say there is interest given, but can one dictate of how the succession should be gone about?
It is different. It depends. Let's say, for example, in America, you could dictate by influencing the Democratic Party to select Hillary Clinton, as opposed to, you sit down, what do you call, Biden, and then you realize there's Sanders who could beat Hillary Clinton. You support him using establishment. In some places you say, in other places you keep quiet, but you give your resources as a way of support. So an outgoing president like Uhuru Kenyatta, can use his influence, can use his resources. He can use the state power and state resources to help Ruto become president. It depends really. But very few people. It will have to highly civilized democracies like Germany, where Merkel will just leave and go to her flat without bothering. But even then, if you love a country, you have led for 5, 10, 15 years, you must have an interest in whose hands you are leaving that country.
All right, Mheshimiwa Ndindi, earlier on in your response, you said our identity this time will not be based on region, it will be based on, among other factors, the economic condition. And that, I suppose, again, and I could be wrong in saying this, is driven by what you also alluded to as the hustler narrative, which has had various interpretations. In 30 seconds, what in your view is the hustler narrative, before I ask the other questions that I have?
Abubakar, hustler narrative, I'm sure we have had many interpretations, but I want also to tell the likes who have had those many interpretations that we do not need anyone to tell us who we are. As in the national hustler nation, we know ourselves and we know what the narrative actually means. And
Ndindi, I bet the question is, what is your understanding, interpretation of the hustler narrative? I
was coming to that, but I needed to clear the air because there are many people out there, saboteurs of our narrative, who are trying to define for us who we are. We know ourselves. And what we actually mean in terms of the hustler narrative is that we want every Kenyan to be evaluated on the basis of their merit. We want every Kenyan, when you are called for an interview, when you are doing business, whether in private or even with the government, that every Kenyan will be put on a scale where they are evaluated on the basis of their merit. That is number one.
You don't believe that has been happening?
Of course, it has not been happening, and you know for sure. But also number two, what we believe in the hustler nation, and also number two of the hustler narrative, is that we believe in hope, that we can come from so down, you can come from an abyss and rise up to any situation and to any level that you can rise to in our country. And that is in contrast to the other or counter narrative on the other side, who they believe that just by kin selection, by being born in a certain family, by having this kind of afraid that you can be anything. We believe that every Kenyan is equal and they should be put on a scale, they should be put on a level playing ground where they are only evaluated on merit from whichever side they come from.
Ndindi, when in your own explanation, you classify some as hustlers, others as the others, are you not dividing Kenyans based on class?
We are not dividing Kenyans in terms of class, Abubakar. And I'm sure you live in Kenya. You didn't come this evening from the moon. We know for sure that Kenya has not been the country that we'd all be proud to live in. Because you had a country where for you to rise, you have to come from somewhere, from a certain family. We also want to give the other Kenyans on the other side hope, who are the majority, that you can come from a family that no one knows. Your father, your mother must not necessarily be known or have a big name. And even from that kind of a situation, you can rise up to be a respectable business person. You can rise up to occupy any position in our country, because the evaluation should not be on the basis of those non-issues. The evaluation on who I am or the other person is should always be on the basis of merit, in terms of their qualification and in terms of their ideologies, where they can take the country in terms of, and especially forward.
All right, Mheshimiwa Moses Kuria, Ndindi says it's not about class classification and divisions of Kenyans based on their economic and class status. But surely it seems so when some are regarded as a dynasty because of the positions or the favors they inherited from their fathers or mothers or their family status, and others are hustlers.
Before I answer that question, Abubakar, let me address my good friend Manyora. I understand your agony, Herman Manyora. I understand, I can see you're battling with understanding. Why are these Kikuyu supporting somebody like William Ruto Why are these Kikuyus not taking briefs from elders? Why are these Kikuyus, trusting young people like Ndindi Nyoro to chart the way forward? I understand. But sadly for you and for many people who are like you, that is a reality. Even me, sometimes I go to some of the areas in Mount Kenya region, try to understand those people. It is an awakening. We call it in my language, Itweka. Itweka was a cultural right whereby one generation leads to another generation. And now it's not just an age generation, because our age generation happened when Uhuru Kenyatta became president at only 51 years, and even almost became president at 41 years. Earlier, remember, in 2002, Uhuru Kenyatta was 41 years. So we have had the age generational transition. What we're now having now is a transition of the people who I call the product of the labor and toil of our parents. That our parents are saying, wait a minute, why did I take Ndindi Nyoro to school? As a parent and as a community. If I took him to school and then he has to wait for instructions from somebody else, then what was the word of that? They are saying we are going to believe in our children. They are saying we are going to believe in those people who understand our problems. They are saying we want to entrust our future and our destiny in those people whom we've seen grow and understand our problem, come from within our problem, because they have got a first-hand understanding of our problem. It is a fact that some of the people in this country, you tell them what is poverty, they will turn to Google to find out what poverty is. And people are saying, no, we want people with first-hand experience of these things, because they are more predisposed to come up with solutions. So I think the area that people from outside our region start to understand that and not question every other decision. Why are they supporting somebody from their community? Why are they not going to front a candidate from their community? Why are they not trusting, nobody like Ndindi Nyoro, to chart the way forward? Start getting used to it. This is the new reality. The same way generation transition took place is the same way now that this new awakening to people who understand the problems directly. Because you said in the beginning of this show about Professor Manyora said, I think, sweetness of power. What sweetness? When you have got millions and millions of unemployed people, when you have got businesses that have collapsed, when you have got people who can only be told pass BBI so that you can give you more bursaries. And I never went to school through bursary, and there were no bursaries during my time. We were not having CDF that time. And we were, our parents were contributing fees, development fees for building of classrooms and laboratories. What's the difference? Because why we need bursaries now is because we are poor. Bursary is not something to be proud of, to be told, oh, now pass BBI because now Kiambu will have more bursary. All right. It is a reminder of the poverty with which we have sunk. It's a reminder that we have been rendered useless and impotent as a community. All people who used to depend on themselves, people who used to fend for themselves, people who used to put food on the table are now destitute. And when you give them food, you expect them now to praise you, Hosanna. Now, coming to the Hasra. And,
before you answer my question of whether this is causing a division of classes in Kenyans, why is this realization and the ills you are painting coming now? Does it not make it look more political than genuine economic concerns, which are there?
But what can you politicize about reality, my friend? Is it not a fact that SMEs have collapsed? Is it not a fact that we have not provided a good environment for people to do what they used to do to pay for school fees in the past? Have we not failed our people in the coffee sector? Have we not failed our people in the tea sector? What politics can you say about a bank account? It either has something or nothing. What politics can you say about food on the table? It is there or not there. So please.
But when that becomes a political agenda, somewhat weaponized.
So what's supposed to be politics? What's supposed to be politics if not the issues of our people? What's wrong with it being a political agenda? That's what I was elected for. I'm a politician. I practice politics. I was elected to look after water, I bet the people of Gatundu will be interested if you drove their agenda rather than politics. That is their agenda. The agenda of food on the table.
The agenda of the Hustler and Dynasty as well?
No, the agenda of people. Let me tell you about the Hustler and Dynasty narrative.
It's an agenda, isn't it?
Because it has been taken out of context. You know that we have ignored millions and millions of Kenyans and assumed they didn't exist and assumed that their poverty didn't matter. Does not mean they were not there. There's nothing new we are saying. We are just pointing to that unpleasant fact to that prison truth that was always there. We didn't create a problem. If I tell you I've got a pimple on your face, have I created the pimple? So really, please, let us understand that we have deliberately and conveniently ignored that guy at the bottom of pyramid. So when somebody else comes up and says, wait a minute, tomorrow can be better, we can help you.
Moses Kuria, let me ask you this. If you tell someone like me who is from Mandera that I am poor or otherwise because of where I come from and because of so and so, are you not taking advantage of first my situation to drive your own agenda?
Surely there must be a reason you are poor. Is it God's destiny? See, there must be a reason why you are poor. Is it my fault that I told you why you are poor? Yeah?
And
there must be a reason. And what you are saying is collectively, and I'm not pointing fingers here, Abubakar, collectively we have let down this country. Collectively as a leadership. Collectively as the enlightened class. Collectively as the academia like Professor Manyora. Collectively we have let down this country. Collectively we have assumed that the guy at the bottom of the pyramid does not exist. That somebody has awakened and said, wait a minute, we have got to start doing something about it. We are not blaming the guy who didn't do it yesterday, but don't begrudge me if I try to do something. The guy who is doing nothing should not begrudge the guy who is trying to do something.
All right, let me give Ndindi a chance. He wants to respond. Okay,
Abubakar, even using your example, if I say that probably because you come from a certain area you are poor, if you are actually poor, then I should say that you are poor. It would be dishonest for me to say otherwise. And therefore, there is nothing wrong in stating that people are poor when they are actually poor.
But Ndindi, even to put it in... Ndindi, there is something wrong in telling me I am poor because so-and-so made me poor.
It can be true, Abubakar, because leadership, the role of leadership actually across. Actually, the difference between a country like Kenya, where we are in terms of the economic situation, and any other country, it is not about natural endowments. It is purely about leadership. And therefore, there are so many people who are poor in this country because we've had bad leadership in the past. But I want to put it into context. The whole issue about hustler and of course the other narrative. And I'm just adding on to where Moses Kuria left. From the start, actually from 3 years ago, we started talking about coffee farmers and their produce being bought at a very throwaway price. We started and been talking about tea prices and of course the reforms that are needed within the tea sector. We started talking about the people and especially the importers and the small scale manufacturers in our country who of course were closing shop. And I want to tell you that that narrative we've been talking about for the last 3 years is actually what is called the hustler nation. When you talk about a boda person who in actual sense in the previous way of politicking, actually that person was a nobody, I don't think there is anything wrong in actually bringing those people who have been left out on the table. In a nutshell, the political organization of the yesteryears has always been about positions. When men, of course with big bellies, meet and all they discuss about is on who is going to get this position and the other one which position. We are now changing that narrative. From positions, now we want to talk about jobs for the many Kenyans out there who actually have nowhere to go in the morning. When you talk about the yesteryear's politics, Abubakar, we've been talking about power. Who is more powerful than the other and which position occupied by the other person is more powerful than the other.
Fair enough.
We now want to talk about empowerment of that person who is down there on how they can actually be brought on the table. But to put it more broadly, and I want to warn you, this is a bit more macro and a bit more theoretical. If you look at how the countries have risen, the countries like the UK, the countries like America, countries like China, for example, even the Asian tigers. If you look at a country that has a higher rate of investment like Kenya than the rate of growth in terms of the GDP, then what those kind of economies do is to breed something called inequality. If you look at something called Gini coefficient of countries that actually perpetuate higher rate of return that goes to many multiples higher than the rate of growth in terms of the GDP, then you are creating chaos of the future. And therefore what you want to do is to bring about an economy that actually encompasses and brings everyone to be an agent of that growth within the economy. Because when you have a country like that, Roy, that people with investments, with vast pieces of land, with investments from inheritance, that they can actually earn more by just reaping and waiting for the for their investments without doing anything passively, then you are breeding inequality. An economy that actually brings everyone forward is an economy that creates jobs, that actually brings around people who are outside of the means of production to be actually part of those means of production in terms of giving labor to the growth. And that is why...
Ndindi, just on the economics of this, it's a fact by the charity organization Oxfam that the top 1% of Kenya owns as much wealth as the 99%, and that the gap between the rich and the rest is widening. No one is disputing that. But Ndindi, is it not dangerous to tell someone that he or she is poor because of so and so? Because this is what has become of a trend of this ideology.
Let me tell you, Abubakar, and I think something I said even in these studios. The difference between the Kenya that we live in today and a country called South Korea, for example, is nothing else other than leadership. In terms of endowments, Kenya is actually a more beautiful country than South Korea. Kenya has got more God-given natural resources more than South Korea. The only difference there is between the current Kenya and the current South Korea is the leadership between 1960s. In the 1960, from 1960 itself, there was a president called General Park in South Korea. And I think I told Manyora about that issue the other time. General Park became president of South Korea around the same time we got our first independent president in Kenya. Countries that are more or less the same. But now, as we talk now, South Korea, in terms of GDP per capita, is in multiples of like times 20 of what Kenya has. The only difference was when General Park became president, he came up with very clear policies that we are carrying everyone along. He came up with the policies to promote exports, and therefore, of course, as you know, for you to promote exports, there has to be production. And therefore, the basis of his export-driven economy was actually on the basis of industrialization. Here in Kenya, we were busy talking about who will get what size of land, and therefore, we wasted so many years. And therefore, it is not dangerous to say that there are some people in this country, majority of people are actually poor because we got bad leadership from independence. And that is the kind of bad leadership that we cannot continue having for the next many years to come in this country.
That leadership has been successive. It's not exclusive either to President Uhuru Kenyatta or any other president, is it?
Uhuru Kenyatta was not president during independence.
No, I'm asking that leadership you are pointing out has been successive through the regimes.
Exactly.
Fair enough.
Successive.
Let me bring in our resident analyst, Herman Manyora, to the discussion. Herman, if someone who has a border in per se Meru or Ramu, where I come from, is told that they need to be heard and their voice matters now more than ever, at least that sounds seductive to that person.
Well, I don't really know, but I wanted to say something. On the 30th of December in the year 2002, at Uhuru Park, I went to witness the swearing in of Mwai Kibaki. People threw mud and all manner of things at Moi when he arrived. But the most memorable and noticeable thing, Moses Kuria was there, was a song that shook the park. It rang through the city. It almost brought down the skyscrapers of Nairobi. Yote yawezekana bila Moi. Yote yawezekana bila Moi. These many years since Moi left power, nothing has changed. The things we said Moi had wronged, we said he had spoiled the education system, is worse. We said he had destroyed coffee because it was a mainstay, the main economy of the mount, and he hated Kikuyus. We have done nothing. Everything we said, I see a repeat of the same. Here are people just lamenting and parroting, talking about hustler narrative, talking about a new beginning, talking about the hunger. Moses Kuria has been very eloquent. Coffee, tea is not doing well. People are going to bed hungry. I know that. Everybody knows that. People cannot access medical whatever services in this country. The state of the economy in this country is sad. Everything in this country is doing so bad, you can't even talk about it. But where are the solutions? Where are the policies? You cannot talk about, you see, you talk about South Korea. You are almost talking about Singapore. These were revolutionary leaders who had ideas and a vision for their country. You begin by destroying all the thieves. You are in Singapore and you say the first thing is the mind of the Singaporean. You say we want to join the first world. We cannot do that with all these thieves around. You declare war against corruption. The question is, what future are you talking about as hustlers in a country where everybody is a thief, including all of you who are talking about changing the country? You must first of all deal with the thieves. Where is the progress you talk about? You talk about jobs, for example. What is your stand on some of the very obvious things that cause unemployment in this country? For example, Ndindi Nyoro. What is the hustler position on second-hand clothes? Will you look at America in the eyes the way Kagame did and increase taxation? You chickened as Kenyans. Will you stop China from flooding Kenya with all manner of rubbish, which is what is causing unemployment in this country? Will you do clean business, you people?
All right.
What are you doing to make sure electricity is Bwana, let me talk. Bwana, I've been quiet for all this time.
But Herman, okay, you are asking more of questions than answering the question I asked you, aren't you?
Okay. No, but that's, I'm trying to make a point you are not getting. I've been quiet when they were talking. I'm saying it pains me as a Kenyans, and I think many Kenyans, for us just to take Kenyans for a ride. Because you know people are suffering. You want to ride on the pain of people. Even Trump, he knew what Americans were going through. And he said the things that resonated with Americans. Many demagogues have risen to power by merely looking around and seeing the pain and the suffering of the people. People are going to bed hungry. Unemployment. Even Hitler in Germany rode on the pain of unemployment in Germany. The first thing he did was to recruit hundreds of thousands of young men and put them in uniform. And they were on parade in Berlin, very happy, seeing a future before he used them, before Germany became what it was. So the world has witnessed many demagogues who come around, look at the suffering of the people, and ride on that suffering, promising heaven. So in order that you may prove to me and show Kenyans that you are not such a demagogues, why can't you give us a policy, step by step, on issue by issue? Unemployment, this is what we propose to do. These are the radical measures. Food insecurity in this country, because like Ndindi Nyoro said, many people are holding land they are not even using. We are going to activate the provision in the Constitution on the limit of ownership of land. We are going to tax those who hold land that is... Where are those pronouncements? Please put flesh on the bones.
All right,
the bones
Herman
are shouting about pain in the country.
All right, Herman, and let me bring Moses Kuria to the discussion. Herman talks of policies, the reforms. We know for a fact on the economic level of the Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, the Kibaki economic revolution. What revolution, economic-wise then, at least on paper, will the hustlers who want power, I believe, post-2022, bring on the table?
At this late point in the show, I must say I am now relieved, because that's a discussion I would want to have. I agree with everything that Professor Manyora has said. And that is what we need as a country to start from, to start discussing policies, because we have got plenty of them. We are not just talking. We know exactly how we are going to make happen the things that we say publicly out there. But unfortunately, these have been lost because the question has not been about policies. It has been, why are you talking about these hustlers in the first place? Why are you talking about wheelbarrows? Why are you talking about that Mkokoteni guy? So if we could now say that this is an issue that is legitimately on the table that we must discuss, then I think that is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful starting point. But let me say this. One, the hustler nation, once again, or the hustler economy, is not about rich versus poor. I want to say this on record. And I want to say that if someone looks at Ndindi Nyoro and somebody is inspired by Ndindi Nyoro, then the next thing, they will aspire to be like Ndindi Nyoro. It started with someone saying, wow, I would want to be a member of parliament like Ndindi Nyoro. So many young people in this country would want to be that. And then they aspire. And then after that, there's a third point which people are missing, which you are preaching out there. After inspiration and aspiration, there must be perspiration. That we must sweat it out there, we must work. So it is not right just to tell people that this is a rich versus poor narrative. It's a point of saying, who do you want to become? Who inspires you? Who do you aspire to be? Are you ready to perspire? Are you ready to sweat it out to be like that person? Second thing, you know, the best thing that will happen to this country is the hustle economy. We talk about, and I think Daly has touched on the surface on that issue, bringing all these millions into the economy. People who are out of the formal economy now, if I get every other person, every other young man and woman, every other single mother out there to be able to be part of the formal economy by providing them capital, and we have got money for that as a country, but it's going to the wrong places. If we can be able to provide capital to these millions of Kenyans and tell them, let me show you how you can start your own business, let me show you how you can be an employer, then even now we are struggling with our revenue collection. Imagine adding all these millions of people to the tax base and telling them now, the reason you're not paying taxes yesterday is because, you know, you cannot, you've never seen a housefly in a blood donation queue because it has got nothing to give. But if you can make these people to join the formal economy, then, by the way, that is a beginning point. You can ask me about a million things. Yes, you need to have job creation, you need to have manufacturing, you need to have all those things. But I think the basis of the hustler economy is getting millions and millions of hustlers, millions and millions of people who are today outside the economy of this country, millions of people who do not have a stake in this economy.
All right, Moses Kuria, and because of the interest of time, you are a lawmaker, a member of the Kenya's National Assembly as of now. What is stopping you from doing that?
Parliament is dead.
Why wait for
Parliament is dead. The executive has killed Parliament. Mea culpa, mea culpa, mea culpa. We do not have a parliament. It was raped by the executive many years ago. You saw the other day when we tried to raise our voices, we were thrown out of committees. We can only wait for the hustlers' time.
All right, Mheshimiwa Ndindi.
If I can also put my voice on that question, because it is a lazy issue that we get out there. Why can't you do that and you're an MP?
It's a genuine concern. It's not a lazy argument.
It's genuine. But
you are a lawmaker who was elected by the people.
I want to ask you something, Abubakar. There is no doubt in the minds of any Kenyan that Mwai Kibaki did very well for this economy. We don't remember who were the MPs during the Mwai Kibaki's era. I want also to get you to get this point. When I mentioned South Korea, I already mentioned one person called General Park, who was the president and with the ultimate responsibility. When you go to the story of China, you only talk about the older China that was poor, which was headed by a revolutionary actually, called Mao Zedong, and the basis of a rich China that was led by Deng Xiaoping. You talk about the people with the ultimate power. When you talk about a country like the UK, the US, you talk about the presidents, because that is why we go to the ballot to elect the president with the ultimate power. But I want to go to the policies. Number one, I want to congratulate Manyora for first of all admitting that we are actually in red. Because all this time I have to admit to my friend Manyora, who is a good buddy of mine, that I have actually thought he was an agent of the state. I actually never thought that Manyora can talk, Herman Manyora can say anything contrary or anything that would impute improper motives.
He's a free thinker and an academic who has a right to his opinion at least.
On the state. And therefore, I am relieved and happy that he can face things objectively. Number one, Manyora, you talk about thieves. It is a huge debate that we actually, as hustlers, would want that issue to be handled conclusively. Let us start from where thieving in this country actually started. And also, Manyora, to give us also a meter to measure who is a thief and who is not a thief. Because as far as I know, we have institutions in this country. But all that we peddle around, myself and also the other side, is actually on the basis of innuendo. Because if we are to start from actually the country, Kenya, as a fresh country, let us start from there, who actually stole what from who. So Manyora, we cannot take the country forward by actually having those kind of back and forth debates. To the actual things, policies. For Kenya to actually move forward, we need the General Kamau, Onyango, Wafula, and all the other Kenyans to stop now being dependent of the economy, to stop being passive agents of the economy, and for them to actually be active participants in our economy. For our country to do that, Abubakar, we need to create employment. We need to create opportunities that can actually fit every other caliber and every other gifting and every other qualification. For us to do that and for us to progress, we have to now start making these ideas and making all these imaginations actually turn to money on how to commercialize all these ideas, on how to commercialize these qualifications, and how on how to commercialize these kind of giftings. Now there comes something called finance. There is no country in the world that never grew without a very elaborate and efficient financial system. What we have in Kenya is actually a far cry of the current Kenya in terms of on the financial sector and the Kibaki's financial sector. If you remember well, I'm just trying to cut down my points and to simplify them. If I am to take you back to the Kibaki era, even here outside, tungepata watu wa bank wanatugoja hapa na forms tujaze tupatiwe loan. The current Kenya that we have now, the financial sector is struggled, and it's struggled in two dimensions. Number one, there is something called mobile consumerism loans. The kind of lending now we have in this country is not the Kibaki lending that we had. The Kibaki lending was based on banks lending enterprise, and enterprise growing and therefore employing more. The Uhurunomics that we have in this country currently is an economy that actually promotes consumerism other than enterprise. That is why we have now... And
Ndindi, I know you're basing your argument on the Central Bank of Kenya report, which showed Kenyans are borrowing to use the money.
Not even that. I am basing on the issue because I had two issues on the financial sector. One, we must have a financial sector that is geared and given enough incentives to lead to enterprise, because it is the enterprise that we can only rely on as a country that is not mineral rich. But I also had another point that is important. There is no country that can grow when the leadership and their interests is actually entangled with the national interest. There is no way, and I want to ask this very honestly, if I'm at the apex of leadership and I have interest in the financial sector, I have interest in agribusiness, I have interest in every other sector in the economy. Let me, for example, give you one scenario. If, for example, I'm at the apex of decision making and I own a financial institution, and now I am elected by the same people who depend on this financial institution, when a decision comes on my table, do I side with the people or with the business people in the financial sector, or I side with the clients? For example, another point, if I have interest in the agribusiness, for example, and I am representing farmers on the other side as an elected leader, when a decision comes to my table, who do I actually side with?
All right, and you cite personal interest more than...
For an economy to grow, a leader must not be entangled with something called patronage.
Mheshimiwa, finally, because of the interest of time, what is stopping you as a lawmaker from bringing all these reforms you are talking of? 30 seconds.
Let me tell you something, Abubakar.
What can you...
When I got to parliament, I wrote something, a proposal and a bill on something called guaranteed minimum returns.
Okay.
It has never seen the light of the floor of the House. When I got to Parliament, I started creating a bill on how to make a lean government, because when you have a lean government, then you have people who thrive out there. And the best way to make a lean government, and that was part of my proposal, was first of all to condense the many government institutions, the many boards, and the many parastatals. It never came to the floor of the House. I also recently heard another thing on how to bring down the borrowing in our country. Our country and GOK has got many assets. For example, our stake in a company called Safaricom as a government and as a public of Kenya is in excess of 400 billion. Why are we going to borrow billions from China and elsewhere when we have right assets that we can actually sell and use money to take our country forward? I've had all those proposals.
Ndindi,
I do not make decisions.
You have made clear your proposals. I asked you what was stopping you. Nonetheless, you have answered. Mheshimiwa Moses Kuria, one final question as I give the last of remarks to Herman Manyora. You are on record as well, saying that just on the alignments and realignment of 2022, that Raila and Ruto will work together before the elections na kuna watu wataachwa kwa mataa. Where are you basing your argument on?
Now, because Raila will wake up, he's asleep. And when he wakes up, he will realize that we are talking the same thing and we are discussing the same issues. And when he will wake up and he looks at his support base and he realizes that they are the same as we talk about, and then he will ask himself whether him getting power is more important than the lives of people his supporters who believe in him. So I'm just waiting and waiting, and I'm sure that will happen. But let me say,
and you are sure with confidence that they will work together?
Oh yes, I am very sure, because we've been blinded by common enemies to believe that we are enemies, but we are not enemies. And I think that day is coming when we do realize jointly and commonly that actually we are dealing with a common enemy. But that's a story for another day. Let me say this. I'm very happy this discussion is on the table. And I want us to come back here again. And the starting point is why we have ended. In terms of the solutions, because we can discuss about solutions. And I'm happy that now Manyora and everybody has agreed that this hazard question is legitimately on the order paper. It's legitimately on the table. So to start from there.
Let's not put words into the mouth of Manyora. Let's in fact ask him if he agrees with that.
What I want to say is I welcome Manyora and everybody I disagree with, we discuss. What we don't want to see in this country, Abubakar, from all honesty, is this culture of intimidation, violence, even the threats of assassinations that are coming. I thought things like political assassinations, where some of us, we get subtle threats of assassinations here and there. That, this question is not my question. Even if you assassinate me, you will not remove the question of hustlers because it's legitimately on the order paper.
All right, Herman, your final thoughts and remarks?
Just quickly to tell you, you have asked Ndindi Nyoro, but before that you had asked Kuria, why they can't do something, given that Parliament is a supreme law-making body with a lot of powers. You know why they haven't answered you? These guys cheered as executive, they are now blaming, crushed Parliament. They cheered on as the president gave himself power to make law by misinterpreting the constitution that says you can write a memorandum back to Parliament, and then, but the president used that to make law. They cheered on as bad laws were brought to Parliament. Some were actually overturned by the High Court. You remember the one where there was some kind of scuffle in the House. So now they are looking for a shortcut through the hustler route. Because they had an opportunity to do that. They didn't. But finally, because this is our country, I want to point out to my friends, Ndindi Nyoro, the things you are saying are wonderful. But any economist will tell you the kind of approach we have to running the economy of this country and the other third world countries, it can't work. You need to dismantle in the same way those people you are praising did. For example, you are talking about an enabling financial sector. What are you should be telling us today in matters of policy, what are you going to do to deal with the cartel banks in this country? That go for abnormal profit. So that in this country, in Nyoro, you will agree, you cannot take a bank loan to do genuine business. The only reason why somebody may borrow from a bank 200 million to do business, it's because he wants to do the business with KEMSA, to rob the country. But you cannot borrow 200 million genuinely to do a business in this country and pay back. The interest rates that this and the other terms these banks are giving can only be given in Kenya. Even half of that cannot be levied anywhere else in the world. So you see, you should be telling me and other Kenyans that we as a hustler, and I like hustler people, tell us how you are going to dismantle these systems. Because you must dismantle not just the political system. You must dismantle the economic system, the structures that make it impossible for the people of this country to prosper. But talking about the problems alone, I'm sorry it won't take us far. Thank you.
All right, Herman Manyora is our resident analyst. Ndindi Nyoro is Kaharu lawmaker. Moses Kuria is Gatundu South lawmaker. Former Kiambu governor was supposed to be part of this show, but it seems towards the end
he has
not
turn by. Call us back. We'll come back tonight.
Well, it seems as though he's not with us tonight. Nonetheless, that brings us to the end of tonight's edition of Pundit Night. Thank you all for making time for us once again. Thanks for watching. I'm Abubakar Abdullahi. Bye for now. Enjoy the rest of our programs tonight of all nights. Good night and God bless.